The sound of the alien gavel echoed like thunder through the crystal courtroom. Hundreds of shimmering figures stood in silent rows, their silver-blue skin reflecting the soft light of the twin suns. At the center of it all stood a single human, Evan Cole, aged 24, dressed in a torn uniform that still carried the dirt of war. His hands were bound, his eyes confused. He had come as an engineer, not a soldier. But now he stood on trial before the Thalara Empire, a civilization older than Earth itself. The Thalarans had won the war of trade, not with guns but with laws. And today the law demanded his life to be joined with another's. The queen of the Thalarans rose from her high throne, her voice calm yet filled with power. "The human will marry Lady Serath, daughter of House Vera," she declared. "By this union the sins of humanity shall be cleansed." A wave of whispers swept across the room. Some aliens smiled. Others looked disgusted. To them it was entertainment. To Evan it felt like execution. He turned his head toward the woman who now walked down the aisle, Lady Serath Vera, noble of the Thalara, scientist, and widow of a war hero. Her steps were slow, graceful, and heavy with pride. Her long silver hair shimmered like moonlight, her skin pale with a faint violet glow. Her eyes, deep glowing amber, showed no emotion. She was beautiful, yes, but distant. Evan's breath caught. She looked old enough to be his mother, maybe older. The files had said she was 56 years old, though her kind aged differently. Her features carried the beauty of time, but her voice carried cold steel. "Do not fight this human," she said quietly as she stopped before him. "They'll kill you if you do." Her tone was neither cruel nor kind, and it was tired, almost broken. For a moment, Evan thought he saw sadness behind her calm mask, but then the guards pushed him forward. The ceremony had begun. Golden light filled the chamber as priests of both species began chanting the words of unity. A translator drone hovered near Evan, repeating every alien word in his ear. "By joining flesh and vow, peace shall endure." Peace, he thought bitterly. This isn't peace. This is control. He looked around. Hundreds of alien diplomats, generals, and media drones floated above, recording every second. The entire galaxy was watching this humiliation. Earth's leaders had agreed to it to avoid another war. And Evan, a low-ranking engineer, had been chosen at random to bear the shame. As they exchanged the ceremonial bands, glowing rings that fused into their skin, Evan flinched as the energy burned through his finger. The crowd clapped. The queen nodded in approval. "It is done," she said. "The human and the Thalara are one." Serath turned slightly toward him. "Smile," she whispered without looking at him. "They like it when you smile." Evan forced a weak grin, his stomach twisting. He felt trapped in a dream he couldn't wake from. After the ceremony, the two were escorted to the palace transport. Cameras followed them until the gates closed. Inside the hovering carriage, silence filled the space. The only sound was the low hum of the engines and Serath's slow breathing. Evan looked at her, unsure what to say. She sat straight, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her face turned toward the window. "So, this is real," he said finally. "It was real the moment they chose you." She replied softly, "You are part of my punishment now." "Your punishment?" She glanced at him for the first time and her eyes softened. Just for a heartbeat. "I was the one who warned them not to push your kind. I spoke for peace. They called it betrayal." Evan blinked. "So they forced you into this too?" "Yes," she said quietly. "To remind me what happens when I care too much for humans." The ship landed at her estate, a mansion made of shining white crystal, surrounded by a garden that glowed with blue light. The gates closed behind them, sealing them off from the world. Servants bowed but looked away from Evan, whispering among themselves. He could feel their judgment. To them, he was a pet, not a partner. A servant opened the door to a massive hall filled with floating lights and strange alien art. Evan stepped in, overwhelmed. Every wall shimmered like glass. The air was cold and smelled faintly of rain. Serath walked ahead without waiting for him. "Your room is down the eastern hall. Do not leave it after dark. The guards will assume you're escaping." He frowned. "Escaping from what?" "From a cage that looks like a palace," she said, and turned away. That night, Evan couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring at the alien city glowing beyond the hills. He thought of Earth, of the friends he'd never see again, and of the woman whose sadness he couldn't understand. He remembered the way her hand trembled when the ring fused to his. The way she hid her pain behind pride. Maybe she was as trapped as he was. Outside, the twin moons rose together, one silver, one red. Somewhere in the mansion, Sarath stood alone in her garden, touching a glowing blue flower that pulsed with soft light. She whispered something to it, words Evan couldn't hear. Then, with a sigh, she looked up at the moons and said quietly, "Forgive me." In that moment, he realized this marriage was not just his punishment. It was hers too, and neither of them yet knew how deeply their fates were about to intertwine. The first morning in Lady Sarath's mansion felt like waking inside a dream that wasn't his own. The walls shimmered like frozen light, alive with faint energy that pulsed with every breath of the house. Evan sat up on the edge of the bed, realizing how quiet everything was. No birds, no wind, only the soft hum of distant machinery. A knock came at the door, gentle, measured. A servant entered, her eyes lowered. She was alien, pale green skin with dark markings across her temples. In her hands was a silver tray carrying food that looked like glowing fruit and thick blue liquid. "Lady Sarath requests that you remain in your room," the servant said softly. "She will send for you when needed." Evan nodded, though inside he felt trapped. He waited for hours, staring out the window at the floating gardens below. The alien city spread like a mirror of light across the horizon, its towers rising high into mist. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel like home. By evening, curiosity pulled him out of the room. He walked through long corridors lined with portraits of Thalaran nobles. Every pair of glowing eyes in the paintings seemed to watch him. Guards at each turn followed his steps with silent suspicion. When he reached the dining hall, he found Sarath sitting alone at the far end of a long crystal table. She didn't look up when he entered. Her hair shimmered under the soft lamps, and her silver robe wrapped around her like liquid moonlight. "You were told to stay in your room," she said quietly, still not looking at him. "I got tired of staring at the walls," he replied. "They stare back." That made her lips twitch. Not quite a smile, but almost. She gestured to the empty chair beside her. "Sit. If you must disobey, at least eat something." Evan sat down. The food was strange, but tasted surprisingly good. Sweet, warm, alive in some way he couldn't explain. He noticed Sarath barely touched hers. "You don't eat much," he said. She gave a faint shrug. "My kind eats when we have reason to. Today I have none." Silence stretched between them. The hum of the house filled the space. Finally, he asked the question that had burned inside him since the wedding. "Why did they choose you?" Sarath's gaze turned to the dark windows. "Because I spoke against war. Because I believed your kind deserved a chance to live. For that, they took everything from me, my title, my research, my family name. So this marriage—" Evan started. "Was their way of humiliating me," she finished. "A reminder that my mercy was weakness." He looked down at his hands. "And I'm the punishment." Sarath's expression softened. "You are a symbol, not a man, to them." "To me," she hesitated. "I have not yet decided." For a while, neither spoke. Then, as if trying to change the subject, she stood. "Follow me." She led him through a glass corridor that opened into a hidden garden, a place filled with strange glowing plants and floating pollen that glittered like stars. The air was warm and smelled of rain. In the center stood a single plant unlike the rest, a blue glowing flower, tall and fragile, its petals trembling with light. Sarath knelt before it, touching one leaf gently. "This flower once grew across our world," she said, "but humans burned its fields during the last resource war." Evan froze. "I didn't know." "Of course not," she said. "Your history books will not tell you of the things done to alien soil." Her tone was sharp, but her eyes were not. There was something deeper there, in grief. When she turned to leave, Evan stopped her. "Wait," he said. "I can fix that." "Fix what?" He knelt beside the flower, studying its fading light. "It's dying because its root channels are blocked. The soil is too metallic. You need to reroute energy flow. I can build a filter." She looked at him strangely, half curious, half doubtful. "You understand Thalaran botany?" "No," he said with a faint smile. "But energy is energy. Machines, plants, life, they all follow balance." Sarath watched as he used his small multi-tool from his uniform pocket. He crafted a simple device from bits of broken metal and glass. When he placed it near the root, the light of the flower began to brighten, pulsing stronger, like a heartbeat returning. She stared, silent for a long moment. The glow reflected in her golden eyes. "You did that. Without training?" she asked quietly. He shrugged. Just a habit of fixing broken things. Her lips curved into the smallest smile. Perhaps you were not chosen by mistake. For the first time since his arrival, her voice carried warmth, fragile, uncertain warmth but real. As night deepened, she stood and said softly, "Thank you, Evan Cole." He blinked. "For what?" "For reminding me that some humans still build instead of destroy." The next morning, the mansion buzzed with new life. Servants whispered about Lady Sarath's flower blooming again after years. They looked at Evan with a mix of confusion and respect, but when he saw Sarath at breakfast, her face was cold again. The softness of last night was gone. She acted as if nothing had changed. He didn't understand until he noticed the surveillance drones hovering near the ceiling. Every word was being recorded. Every glance analyzed. When the guards left the hall, Sarath spoke under her breath. "Do not look at me. Do not speak too kindly. They're watching us both." He froze, pretending to eat. "Why?" he whispered. "Because they fear what kindness can do," she replied. Evan didn't answer, but deep inside he knew. The real danger in this house wasn't the walls or guards. It was the growing spark between them that both of them were trying and failing to ignore. And in that quiet moment, beneath the soft hum of the alien lights, a forbidden bond began to take root, one that would soon defy every law written in the stars. Days turned into weeks inside Lady Sarath's mansion, and every day felt longer than the last. The silence there had its own voice, soft, heavy, and watchful. Evan Cole had learned the rhythm of the place, the soft chime that signaled the morning meal, the whisper of the drones that circled the halls, the faint thrum of energy lines running under the floors. But what he couldn't learn was her, Sarath. She spoke little, smiled never, and moved through her palace like a ghost trapped inside her own memories. When she passed him in the corridors, her steps were silent, her perfume faintly floral, and her eyes always distant, golden, glowing, unreadable. To the servants, she was a fallen noble. To the guards, she was a prisoner in silk. But to Evan, she was a puzzle, one that pulled at his curiosity no matter how cold she appeared. One night, as a storm rolled over the alien city, Evan heard something strange. A low hum coming from deep beneath the mansion, not the normal energy flow, but sharper, rhythmic, like machinery. He followed it through the empty halls, careful to avoid the patrolling drones. The sound led him to a sealed metal door hidden behind a curtain of vines. It looked older than the rest of the building. When he touched the panel, it flickered red, locked, but there were faint fingerprints on it. Someone had been here recently. He hesitated, then used his small engineering tool. A few sparks, a quick reroute of the power line, and the door slid open with a hiss. Inside was a lab, dimly lit, filled with alien technology that glowed faintly blue. Tables lined with devices hummed softly, and data screens displayed complex energy readings. Evan stepped closer, eyes wide. He recognized some of the tech. Plasma cores, neural conductors, even human components. Human. Someone was mixing forbidden tech from both civilizations. Then he saw it. At the center of the room stood a half-built machine shaped like a star's heart, pulsing with faint light. Written above its control panel in alien script were two words: Project Dawnfire. Before he could examine further, a voice spoke behind him, calm, sharp, and filled with quiet power. "You shouldn't be here." Evan turned slowly. Sarath stood in the doorway, her silver robe half unbuttoned, her eyes glowing softly in the dark. For the first time, she didn't look angry, just tired. "I heard something," he said. "I wanted to make sure the place wasn't falling apart." She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. "You think I don't know every sound in my own house?" He shrugged. "Then maybe you wanted me to find this." That stopped her. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You're either brave or foolish." "Usually both." For a long moment, they stood in silence. Then, to his surprise, she sighed. "Very well. You found my secret. Now you must understand it." She walked to the center of the lab and placed her hand on the machine. The light inside it brightened. "This is not a weapon, as the Council believes. It's protection, a shield, that can stop orbital strikes designed to save planets, not destroy them. Evan frowned. But the Council banned such research. They said defensive energy nets can be used for war. They banned it, she said bitterly, because they fear anything that gives others power to resist them. Her voice cracked slightly. For the first time, he saw raw emotion break through her calm mask. I built this to save lives. My husband died defending people who didn't deserve his death. And when I refused to build weapons, they turned me into a symbol of weakness, a lesson. Evan took a slow breath. That's why they forced the marriage, to humiliate you. She nodded once. And to remind everyone what happens to those who question the Council. He looked around the lab again, at the glowing panels, the strange energy core. You're still working on it. I never stopped, she said, even when they took everything from me, even now. He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the readings. Your energy flow here is unstable. You're losing half the charge before it loops. Her brows lifted. You can read this? Energy is universal, he said with a small grin. You just need to listen to it. Without waiting for permission, he grabbed a small tool and adjusted one of the conduits. The machine pulsed brighter, smoother. The readings on the panel stabilized. Sarath's eyes widened slightly. You just corrected a problem I spent 3 years trying to solve. Evan looked up. You're welcome. For a moment, she only stared at him. Then something changed in her expression. The faintest trace of awe mixed with warmth. She walked closer, standing beside him. You're not like other humans, she said quietly. You see things the way we do, through connection. He smiled. Maybe because both of us are just trying to fix what's broken. Her gaze lingered on him, too long for comfort. Then she turned away, hiding whatever emotion flickered in her eyes. You should go. If anyone finds you here, they'll think I'm conspiring with you. Maybe you are, he said lightly. She looked back over her shoulder. Do not joke about that, Evan Cole. The Council has executed people for less. He saw fear there, not for herself, but for him. That realization struck deeper than any words. When he left the lab, the door sealed behind him. But something in the air had changed. The mansion no longer felt cold. There was a pulse in its silence now, a shared secret that connected them both. That night, as rain streaked down the crystal windows, Evan sat awake in his room, replaying her words. He remembered the sorrow in her voice, the fire in her eyes when she spoke of saving lives. He thought of how lonely she must have been, building hope in secret, hiding it from the world. And for the first time, he didn't see her as his captor. He saw her as someone fighting against the same chains, only made of light instead of metal. In another room, Sarath stood before her glowing flower, the one he had fixed. She touched its petals and whispered, Perhaps this human is not my punishment after all. Far above, lightning danced across the alien sky. The world slept, unaware, that deep inside a forbidden mansion, two souls, human and alien, had just taken their first step toward rewriting the stars themselves. Morning light filtered through the crystal walls of the mansion, scattering soft blue reflections across the marble floor. Evan Cole woke with a rare calm in his chest. For the first time since his forced marriage, he didn't feel like a prisoner. He felt needed. He spent the next few days in the hidden lab working quietly beside Lady Sarath. The mansion above remained cold and lifeless, but the world beneath it buzzed with quiet purpose. Every hum of machinery, every flicker of light from the control panels became part of their secret rhythm. Sarath was different down there. In the lab, she wasn't a noble or a symbol of shame. She was a scientist, focused, intense, and alive. Her eyes, golden and bright, followed the energy streams with childlike curiosity. When she explained something, her voice carried the warmth of passion buried under years of silence. At first, their conversations were purely technical. Evan adjusted circuits, Sarath refined algorithms. But soon those small talks turned into something else, moments that slipped past the walls she had built around herself. One evening, while they calibrated the energy shield, Evan asked, "Why do you still fight for them, the people who punished you?" Sarath didn't answer immediately. Her fingers moved across the console with graceful precision before she said softly, "Because if I stop trying to protect them, I become what they say I am. Bitter and broken." Evan watched her for a long moment. "You're not broken," she looked up, meeting his eyes. For a heartbeat, her calm expression trembled, like the surface of still water touched by wind. Then she smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides years of pain. "You say that as if you've known me all my life." "I know the look of someone trying to fix the world alone," he said quietly. "I've seen it in the mirror." Something in her gaze softened. She turned away quickly, pretending to focus on her instruments, but her next words came quieter, more human. "Perhaps we are more alike than I thought." That night, when Evan returned to his quarters, he couldn't sleep. The image of her, the way her hair glowed under the lab lights, the way her voice softened when she spoke of hope, lingered in his mind. He told himself it was respect, gratitude, but deep down he knew it was something else, something forbidden. The next morning he entered the lab early and found Sarath asleep at her desk. Her head rested on folded arms, her breathing slow. Her usually perfect hair had fallen loose, strands framing her face in a way that made her seem far younger, far gentler. For a moment Evan just stood there, watching her not as an alien, not as his captor, but as a woman who carried the weight of too many worlds. Then the system alarm beeped softly. She stirred, waking with a start. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked, straightening her robe. "Long enough to know you work too much," he said with a grin. She exhaled, half amused, half embarrassed. "You humans have no sense of privacy." "And you Thalarans have no sense of rest," he countered. For the first time she laughed, a soft melodic sound that seemed to chase away the cold air around them. "You are impossible, Evan Cole." "I've been told that before," he said, smiling. They returned to work, but something unspoken hung between them. Every time their hands brushed over the same tool, every time their eyes met over the console, it left a faint spark neither could ignore. Later that day, a small accident broke their routine. One of the power conduits overloaded. Sparks burst from the panel and Evan jumped to disconnect the wires. He wasn't fast enough. The surge burned across his arm. "Evan!" Sarath rushed to him. Her fingers glowed as she pressed her palm against his skin. A soft golden light spread and the pain faded instantly. He looked down. The burn mark vanished, replaced by smooth, unscarred skin. He stared at her. "You healed me?" She pulled her hand back quickly. "It's a minor energy transference. Nothing more." But the way she said it, quiet, almost trembling, betrayed the truth. The act had shaken her. She looked away, unable to meet his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly. She nodded, silent. For the next few minutes they worked in uneasy quiet. Then Sarath finally spoke. "Evan, we must be careful. The bond that is forming between us, it is dangerous." He frowned. "Because of the council?" "Because of me," she said. "I cannot offer what you seek. My people would never accept it. You would lose everything." "I already lost everything the moment they forced me here," he replied. "What's left to lose?" Her eyes flickered, and for a heartbeat her composure broke. She turned away, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then you are a fool. And fools are often the ones who change history." That night Evan found her in the garden again, standing beside the glowing blue flower. The light reflected softly across her face. He stepped closer. "You know," he said gently, "if that flower can survive in this cold, maybe we can too." She looked at him, and this time she didn't hide the warmth in her eyes. "You speak as if hope is easy." "Maybe it is," he said, "if you share it with someone." They stood in silence under the alien moons, two souls from different worlds, bound by something neither fully understood. The flower between them glowed brighter than ever, its petals unfolding toward the light. And though neither of them spoke it aloud, they both knew something had changed. The forced marriage that began as punishment had become something else. Fragile, dangerous, and beautiful. In the cold heart of a mansion built for control, a forbidden love was quietly being born. Whispers began to spread long before either of them noticed. At first it was only the servants, quiet voices echoing down the marble halls of Lady Sarath's mansion. They spoke of how the human husband spent too much time with the fallen noble. How laughter, something unheard in that cold house, and had returned. Then the rumors reached the city. Lady Sereth smiles again. She walks with her human in the gardens. She dares to touch him. By the time the council heard, the story had already grown, exaggerated, twisted, poisoned. What began as partnership in science became, in the eyes of the powerful, a scandal against the purity of the Thalera race. Evan had no idea how bad it had become until one morning when armed guards surrounded the mansion. The great doors burst open. Drones swarmed through every corridor. By order of the High Council, the lead officer announced, Lady Sarath Vera is under investigation for violation of interspecies code. Evan stepped forward instinctively. She's done nothing wrong. The guard's glowing weapon turned toward him. Silence, human. You will speak only when asked. Sarath appeared at the top of the staircase, calm and regal as ever. Though Evan saw the tension in her eyes, she descended slowly, her silver robe flowing like liquid light. What is this accusation? She asked. The officer handed her a data slate. Evidence of emotional and physical intimacy between you and the human. The council believes you have compromised the peace accord. She held the slate, but her face did not change. Do you have proof of this? The palace drones recorded your private communications. You spoke words of affection. Evan froze. They were listening the whole time. Sarath met the officer's gaze without flinching. If words are crimes, then perhaps your empire fears honesty more than love. The guard hesitated, clearly unprepared for her defiance. But another voice echoed from behind him, a cold, cruel voice. The Lady Sarath always had a soft heart for lesser beings. It was Lord Varen, a high-ranking council member, tall and elegant, his silver armor gleaming under the light. His eyes glowed brighter than the rest, proud, cruel, and curious. You, Sarath said quietly, you've been waiting for this. Of course, he replied. You embarrassed our kind by taking a human into your home. Now the entire empire watches you like a show, a widow and her pet. It's shameful. Evan's fist clenched. You think she's ashamed of me? Varen smirked. No, she's incapable of shame. That's why she must be reminded. He turned to the guards. Arrest her. The soldiers moved forward. Sarath raised a hand. Touch me and I will tear your minds from your skulls. Her eyes flared gold, energy pulsing around her. The guards froze. Even Varen took a step back, but she could not fight the council. Not yet. Slowly, she lowered her hand. Very well, she said. If I must stand trial, I will. But the human stays here. He is not your prisoner. Varen smiled. Oh, he is nothing without you. We will see how long your husband survives when you are gone. Evan stepped closer, his voice steady. If you touch her, you'll regret it. Varen laughed. How amusing. The pet believes he can bite. Before Evan could speak again, Sarath turned sharply to him. Enough. Her tone was firm, her eyes pleading silently. Don't fight this. She allowed the guards to escort her out. The mansion's doors closed behind her with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. For the first time since arriving on this world, Evan felt truly alone. That night, the house was silent again. The flower in the garden dimmed as if mourning. Evan sat by it for hours, his hands trembling with helpless anger. When he finally stood, he noticed something glinting near the plant. A small data crystal, barely visible under the soil. He picked it up and activated it. A hologram flickered to life. Sarath's face, calm but sad. Evan, if you are hearing this, it means they came sooner than I expected. I cannot fight them openly yet. The council controls every communication channel. But listen carefully. There is a way out. 2 suns, 1 horizon. When they meet, the skies will open. Return to the garden at sunset in 2 days. Trust me, her voice wavered softer now. And Evan, whatever happens next, remember this. I chose you long before they forced me to. You gave me back the will to live. Don't let them take that from you. The message ended. Evan stood there, the faint hum of the hologram fading into silence. His heart pounded. He waited through the next 2 days like a man living between seconds. The guards still patrolled the mansion, watching him closely, unaware of the hidden message. When the second sunset came, the twin suns aligned on the horizon, painting the sky in gold and red. Evan walked to the garden, his heart racing. The blue flower glowed brighter, and from behind it a shadow emerged, cloaked, silent, graceful. Sarath stepped forward, her eyes burning with quiet fire. She wore dark armor instead of her royal robe, her hair tied back, her expression fierce. "You're alive," he whispered. "I told you to trust me," she said. "Now we have to leave, tonight." "Leave? Where?" "Anywhere the council cannot reach. I've stolen a transport ship, hidden beyond the city's barrier. But we must go before they realize I'm gone." Evan's pulse quickened. "You're risking everything." She looked at him, her face softening. "Everything was lost the day they chose our fate. What we do now is take it back." A light flared in the distance and alarms. Drones had detected movement. Sarath grabbed his hand. "Run!" They sprinted through the garden as sirens blared across the sky. Guards shouted. Energy bolts streaked past them. Evan looked back once. The blue flower still glowing, defiant even in chaos. For the first time since his forced marriage, he didn't feel trapped. He felt alive, and as Sarath led him into the night, her hand in his, he realized something no council decree could ever control. He wasn't just her punishment anymore. He was her partner. The night sky burned with streaks of silver light as alarms echoed across the Thalaran capital. Search drones filled the air like glowing insects, their beams cutting through clouds and smoke. Evan Cole ran beside Sarath, his breath ragged, boots slamming against wet stone as they raced through the lower city tunnels. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder, metallic footsteps, drone hums, and the cold voice of command units shouting her name. "Lady Sarath Vera, you are under arrest for treason. Stop immediately." Sarath didn't stop. Her armor shimmered faintly under the light, a thin energy field protecting her body. In her hand she carried a small orb that pulsed like a heartbeat, the core of Project Dawnfire. Evan shouted over the noise, "If that's what they're after, maybe we should drop it." She glanced at him, eyes glowing gold in the darkness. "If we lose this, they win. With this core, we can build again, free from their chains." They turned a sharp corner and burst out of the tunnel into a hidden hangar. Inside sat a small alien ship, sleek and silver, its engines thrumming softly. Evan stared at it in disbelief. "You actually stole a ship?" Sarath smirked faintly, her composure returning even under pressure. "Borrowed. They won't need it after tonight." Before they could board, a drone swarm burst through the tunnel behind them, weapons glowing red. Evan ducked, grabbing a metal pipe from the floor. "Go, I'll hold them." "Don't be foolish," she snapped, raising her hand. A surge of energy shot from her palm, creating a shimmering barrier that stopped the incoming fire. The air rippled with power. "Get in." Evan jumped into the cockpit. Sarath followed, sealing the door. The controls lit up in a language he could barely read, but his engineer's mind recognized the basics: thrusters, stabilizers, shield array. He slid into the pilot's seat. "You sure you trust a human to fly this?" Her voice softened. "I trust you more than anyone else." The engines roared to life, shaking the hangar. As the door opened, bright lights flooded in. Thalaran warships hovered above, their cannons locking onto the escaping vessel. Sarath's expression hardened. "They won't let us leave quietly." "Then let's make some noise." Evan slammed the throttle forward. The ship shot out like a comet, weaving through the narrow city spires. Beams of energy followed them, exploding against the walls in bright flashes. The whole city seemed awake with fury. Sarath took control of the rear defense system, launching counterbursts of plasma. "Drones incoming, 6 o'clock. "I see them." Evan pulled the ship into a steep climb. G-forces pressed them into their seats. The sky ahead turned into a storm of fire and metal. He felt sweat on his neck, his heart racing. But his focus sharpened. The ship broke through the upper atmosphere, where the alien clouds gave way to open space, black, endless, and filled with distant stars. But freedom didn't wait for them there. 3 Thalaran interceptors closed in, their sleek forms glinting in the starlight. "Sarath, I could use a miracle." She pressed her hand over the core orb. "Then let me be one." She placed it into the control socket. The ship's lights flared. Power surged through the systems, doubling their output. Evan felt the controls vibrate under his grip. "What did you do?" "I gave us the heart of a star," she said. The ship darted forward, faster than light. The interceptors fired, but the blasts missed, trailing behind like fading ghosts. Evan pulled hard on the stick, twisting through debris fields and gas clouds. Each move felt instinctive, as if the ship itself guided him. But then, A direct hit. A blast tore through their left wing. The cabin shook violently. Sparks rained down. Warning lights filled the console. Shields down to 20%, he shouted. Sarath grabbed the emergency controls, diverting power. We can't outrun them. We'll have to fight. She stood, pressing her palm against the central energy node. Golden light spread from her hand through the ship's circuits. The vessel responded like a living creature. The hull shimmered and the ship turned sharply, facing its pursuers. Evan, when I say now, release the pulse vent, she commanded. Got it. The interceptors closed in. One of them locked onto their rear and fired a plasma missile. The heat signature screamed across the radar. Now. Evan hit the switch. The ship expelled a burst of blinding energy from its engines, a shockwave that tore through space like a solar flare. The pursuing crafts were thrown off balance. One exploded instantly. The other two spun out, disabled. The silence that followed was deafening. Only the hum of the engines remained. Evan looked back at her, sweat on his brow, heart still racing. We did it. Sarath leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Her armor flickered, revealing burns on her arm. Not yet. They'll send more. He rushed to her side. You're hurt. She shook her head weakly. Just energy recoil. I'll recover. He didn't believe her. He tore a strip from his sleeve and wrapped it around the burn anyway. Her hand trembled slightly under his touch. You risked your life for me, he said. She looked up at him, her voice quiet, but steady. No, Evan, I risked it for us. For a moment, the galaxy outside felt small, just the two of them, floating between stars, bound by something far stronger than duty. But peace didn't last long. The radar beeped again, a new fleet approaching. Dozens of signatures. Too many to fight. Sarath moved toward the navigation console. We can't go through them. We'll go around. Through what? There's nothing but storm space ahead. Evan protested, her eyes burned with fierce determination. Exactly. No one follows into the Veil. The Veil, a storm zone of plasma lightning and gravitational distortions. No sane pilot entered it, but Evan wasn't thinking about sanity anymore. Hold on, he said, gripping the controls. Let's make history. The ship dove into the glowing storm. Colors exploded across the view, red, gold, and violet lightning twisting around them. The hull shook violently, alarm screaming, but Sarath's hand stayed firm on his shoulder. Keep steady, she whispered. We're almost free. A massive shockwave struck. The ship lurched. Evan tried to correct, but another blast hit them. The console sparked. A bright flash, and everything went white. When he opened his eyes, there was silence. No alarms, no engines, just darkness and soft breathing beside him. He turned. Sarath was slumped in her seat, pale, bleeding from her shoulder. Sarath. He reached for her, shaking her gently. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but still glowing faintly. Did we make it? He looked out the window. Beyond the shattered clouds, a calm world glowed. A small moon covered in blue forests and silver rivers. Yes, he whispered. We made it, she smiled faintly. Then maybe there's still hope for us after all. Her hand slipped from his, and her eyes closed as the stars outside reflected in the tears on his face. Evan held her close, whispering, You're not leaving me, not after all this. The ship descended slowly toward the glowing moon, trailing smoke and fire, a broken vessel carrying two hearts that had already survived the impossible. And as the alien sky opened before them, Evan Cole made a silent vow. Whatever happened next, he would never let her fall again. The ship descended through clouds glowing faint blue. Beneath them stretched a moon untouched by war, endless silver forests and lakes that shimmered like glass under twin suns. Evan Cole guided the damaged craft through the atmosphere, the controls flickering under his trembling hands. Beside him, Lady Sarath lay motionless, her breathing shallow. Her armor was cracked, her skin pale and glowing faintly where energy burns had scarred it. Stay with me, he whispered, his voice breaking. We're almost there. The ship landed roughly on soft ground, skidding through a field of silver grass before grinding to a halt. Smoke filled the cabin. Evan unbuckled himself and rushed to her side. He lifted her carefully, carrying her down the ramp into the cool alien breeze. The sky was quiet here. No drones, no ships, only the soft hum of life. The ground pulsed faintly with energy as if alive, a forgotten world that breathed peace. Evan laid her under a wide, glowing tree, its branches shimmering with light. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but aware. "We made it," he said softly. "You're safe now." She smiled faintly. "Safe? There is no safety for exiles. Only distance from those who hunt them. Then we'll make safety here," he said firmly. "You built shields for worlds. You can build one for us." Her lips curved in a weak smile. "You sound like a dreamer." He looked at her, his hand brushing against hers. "I sound like someone who finally found something worth protecting." She didn't reply. Her eyes closed again, her breathing slow but steady. Evan spent the next days repairing the ship using scraps from the wreck. He built a shelter beside it powered by small energy cells. The forest around them glowed softly each night, full of strange creatures that watched from the mist but never attacked. It was as if the planet itself knew they came in peace. Sarath began to heal, though her strength returned slowly. Sometimes she watched him work from under the tree, quiet, her expression unreadable. "You build as if you've done this all your life," she said one morning. "I was an engineer before all this," he replied. "Building is the only way I know to keep from falling apart." She looked at the small shelter, the makeshift solar panels, the repaired comm device, and nodded. "You are more Thalaran than you realize," he smiled. "And you're more human than you'll ever admit." Over time, the silence between them changed. It no longer felt cold. They shared food, laughter, and small pieces of their pasts. Evan learned that Sarath once had a son who died defending a colony from pirates. She had never spoken of him before. He reminded her of why she once believed in mercy. One evening, as the sun sank and the stars brightened, Sarath stood beside the small glowing lake near their camp. She stared at the reflection of the twin suns merging into one light. Evan walked beside her quietly. "You're thinking of going back, aren't you?" She shook her head. "No, I'm thinking of what we left behind. Empires fall, Evan, but hearts remember." He placed a hand over hers. "Then let this be our empire, just us right here." She turned to him, her eyes glowing softly. "You forget I'm 33 years older than you." He smiled. "And you're 33 times wiser. Seems fair to me." Her laughter, soft and genuine, filled the air. "You always find words to turn my fears into warmth." "It's what humans do best," he said. "We survive by believing there's something better waiting tomorrow." They stood together until the sky turned silver. Weeks passed, and their small camp grew into a home. Evan expanded the shelter into a dome, with power cells buried underground and a small garden growing outside. The same blue flower they had saved back in the mansion now grew again, brighter, stronger. Sarath cared for it every morning, her hands gentle, her face peaceful. One day, as she watched the flower bloom, she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "When I first saw you, I thought you were a punishment, a chain meant to humiliate me. But you became the reason I remembered who I was." Evan looked at her. "And you reminded me that love isn't something forced. It's something that survives when everything else burns away." She smiled, her eyes glistening with faint tears. "You speak like a poet, Evan Cole." He shook his head. "No, just a man who finally understands what home feels like." Later that night, under a sky filled with glowing constellations, they sat by the fire. The blue flower glowed beside them, casting soft light on their faces. Sarath reached for his hand. "Do you ever think the universe will forgive us?" He squeezed her fingers gently. "The universe doesn't need to forgive love." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the slow rhythm of their hearts. Then, in the distance, a signal light blinked faintly in the sky, a sign of a ship searching. The council, perhaps, or a patrol. Sarath tensed. "They found us." Evan looked up, his jaw tightening. "Then they'll learn that freedom doesn't die easily." She turned to him, seeing the resolve in his eyes, and whispered, "No, not fight. Not anymore. We'll show them." She walked to the ship's remains and activated the core of Project Dawnfire. Its golden light expanded slowly across the forest, creating a vast, shimmering dome. It pulsed once, then stabilized, a shield strong enough to hide them from any sensor. The patrol ship passed above, scanning the region, and then drifted away, unable to detect them. When the light faded, Sarath leaned against him, exhausted but smiling. "It's done. They can't see us now. We're free." He held her close, his arms wrapped around her shoulders. "Then this world is ours." Under the alien stars, they stood together, surrounded by the hum of new life. The blue flower glowed between them, symbol of everything they had lost and found again. Years later, travelers whispered of a hidden world beyond the veil, a place where a human and an alien built peace together. They called it the Garden of Two Suns, and in the heart of that legend stood a single truth. Love, when born from courage, can outlive empires and outshine stars.